I still remember exactly where I was standing when my world collapsed. It was Tuesday afternoon, and I was in my kitchen stirring a pot of soup that I had planned to take over to my son Daniel and his girlfriend Sarah later that week. The phone rang, and when I saw Daniel's name on the screen, my heart did that little happy jump it always did when he called. "Hi, honey," I said, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder. "I was just thinking about you. I wanted to ask about the wedding plans. Have you and Sarah finally picked a date? I need to start making arrangements." There was a long pause that should have warned me that something was wrong. Then Sarah's voice came through the speaker, not Daniel's. She must have taken the phone from him. "Oh, we got married yesterday," she said, and I swear I could hear a smile in her voice. Not a happy smile, a cold one. "We kept it small, really small. Just immediate family." The wooden spoon fell from my hand and clattered against the kitchen floor. For a moment, I couldn't process what I had just heard. The soup continued bubbling on the stove, but everything else in the world seemed to stop. "Yesterday?" I managed to whisper. But I thought we were planning it together. I thought it was very last minute," Sarah interrupted. "Very intimate. You understand." No. I did not understand. I did not understand how my only son could get married without telling his mother. I did not understand how the woman I had welcomed into our family, the woman I had treated like a daughter for 4 years, could speak to me with such casual cruelty. "Daniel?" I called out, hoping my son would take the phone and explain that this was some kind of misunderstanding. "Daniel, are you there?" "He's here," Sarah said, "but he's busy right now. We're still celebrating. Without me." The woman who had paid their rent for 4 years straight. The woman who had spent $350 on a beautiful mother of the groom dress that was hanging in my closet at that very moment. The woman had saved $2,500 in a special account specifically for their wedding gift. I hung up the phone and stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the smell of homemade soup and the sound of my own heart breaking. The counter in front of me was covered with wedding magazines that Sarah and I had looked through together just 2 weeks ago. We had marked pages with flowers she liked, venues she thought were pretty, and dresses that caught her eye. All lies. All of it had been lies. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone again. I needed to see for myself. I needed proof that this nightmare was real. I opened Facebook and went straight to Sarah's page. There it was posted just 3 hours ago. Album after album of wedding photos. Sarah was in a gorgeous white dress that I recognized immediately because I had given her $800 last month when she said she needed money for personal expenses. Daniel is in a black tuxedo, looking handsome and happy. Her parents were beaming with pride as they walked her down the aisle. Her 3 sisters as bridesmaids in matching blue dresses. Her grandparents are sitting in the front row. Her cousins, her friends from work, her college roommates. 43 people. I counted them. 43 people had been invited to witness my son's wedding. Everyone except the woman who had made it financially possible. The venue was the Garden Club downtown, the same place Sarah and I had visited 2 months ago. This would be perfect, she had said then, taking photos of the flower arrangements and the beautiful archway. But it's probably too expensive. I had squeezed her hand and told her not to worry about money, that we would make it work somehow. Now I knew how they had made it work. With my money, without my presence. I scrolled through photo after photo, each one a knife in my chest. The professional photographer they had hired. The elaborate flower arrangement. The 3-tier cake is decorated with real orchids. The open bar with a bartender in a bow tie. This was not a small, intimate wedding. This was a full celebration that had cost thousands of dollars. My phone rang again. This time, it was my sister Margaret calling from Ohio. "Linda," she said as soon as I answered, "I just saw the most wonderful photos on Facebook. Daniel and Sarah's wedding looked absolutely beautiful. You must be so proud. But I'm confused about something. Why didn't you post any photos? I would have expected you to be showing off your beautiful family." I couldn't speak. The words were stuck in my throat like stones. "Linda, are you there? I wasn't invited. I whispered. What? That's impossible. You must be joking. I found out 3 hours ago. Sarah called to tell me they got married yesterday. I wasn't invited, Margaret. My own son got married, and I wasn't invited. The silence on the other end of the line stretched on forever. Finally, Margaret spoke, and her voice was filled with shock and anger. Linda, honey, are you telling me that Daniel got married without his mother there? Yes. The same Daniel whose rent you've been paying for 4 years. Yes. The same Sarah who calls you mom and tells you she loves you like her own mother? Yes. Margaret started crying. My older sister, who never cried, was sobbing into the phone for me. This is wrong, she said. This is so wrong, I don't even have words for it. After I hung up with Margaret, I walked upstairs to my bedroom and opened my closet. There it was. The dress I had bought was specifically for Daniel's wedding, navy blue with delicate silver embroidery. I had tried it 6 times, wanting to make sure I looked perfect for my son's special day. I had even bought new shoes to match and a small silver purse, $350 for a dress I would never wear, at least not to the event I had bought it for. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the envelope in my jewelry box. The envelope with $2,500 in cash that I had been saving for months to give them as a wedding gift. Money I had set aside by eating cheaper meals, by canceling my cable subscription, and by skipping my monthly lunch dates with friends. I sat on my bed and started counting in my head. 4 years of rent payments at $800 per month. That was $38,400 right there. Monthly grocery money, usually around $300, because I always made sure their refrigerator was full. That was another $14,400. Car insurance, because Daniel had been in an accident 2 years ago. Oh, and his rates were too high. 12 months at $200 per month. Then I would have taken over completely. That was $8,000. Medical expenses when Sarah had her wisdom teeth removed and they had no insurance. $1,200. When Daniel lost his job last winter and they needed help with utilities. $1,800. Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, anniversary gifts. At least $500 per year for 4 years. That was $2,000 more. The number in my head was staggering. $66,800. I had given them nearly $67,000 over 4 years. Money that had come from my retirement savings, from the life insurance policy my late husband had left me, from the small inheritance my mother had left when she passed 3 years ago. And they had repaid me by getting married in secret. I looked at those wedding photos again, and this time I saw them differently. Every smile, every laugh, every joyful moment had been bought with my money and planned behind my back. The flower girl was Sarah's little niece, wearing a dress that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. The ring bearer was Daniel's cousin, a boy I had never met, because they had never bothered to introduce me to Sarah's extended family. There was a photo of Daniel and Sarah cutting the cake, and they were feeding each other with silver forks that matched their wedding rings. Rings I had helped pay for when Sarah came to me 6 months ago, crying about how they couldn't afford the ones they wanted. Linda, she had said, sitting at my kitchen table with tears in her eyes, I know it's asking a lot, but Daniel and I found the perfect wedding rings. They're family heirloom style, exactly what we dreamed of. But they're $3,200, and we just don't have that kind of money. Of course I had help. I always helped. I had taken the money from my emergency fund and given it to them the next day, watching Sarah's face light up with joy as she hugged me and called me the best mother-in-law in the world. Now those rings were sparkling in wedding photos that I would never be in. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. When had they decided to exclude me? Was it Sarah's idea or Daniel's? How long had they been planning this betrayal? Had they laughed about it together, talking about how easy it was to take my money while shutting me out of their lives? I thought about all the conversations we had about their future wedding, all the times Sarah had shown me dresses online, asking for my opinion, all the times Daniel had talked about wanting a beautiful ceremony to start their married life right. All the times I had assured them that money wouldn't be a problem, that I would help however I could. Had it all been an act? Had they been planning a secret wedding even while they were asking me to help pay for their dream ceremony? The worst part was realizing that this wasn't just about one day. This was about 4 years of being seen as nothing more than a source of money. 4 years of believing I was building a relationship with my future daughter-in-law, when really I was just being used. 4 years of thinking my son valued my presence in his life, when apparently he only valued my bank account. As I finally drifted off to sleep that night, I made a decision that would change everything. This was the last time Daniel and Sarah would ever use me. This was the last time I would give them money while they gave me nothing but lies in return. Tomorrow, I will start fighting back. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was as if the shock of yesterday had burned away all the confusion and self-doubt I had been carrying. For the first time in 4 years, I wasn't thinking about what Daniel and Sarah needed from me. I was thinking about what I needed from them. The first thing I did was make coffee and sit down at my kitchen table with a notebook and calculator. If I was going to confront them about this betrayal, I needed to know exactly what it had cost me, not just emotionally, but financially. I started with the rent, $800 per month for 48 months. That was $38,400. But then I remembered that for the first 6 months, I had only paid $600 because they had a roommate. So the real number was $37,200. Next came the groceries and household supplies. I had been buying their food for 4 years, always making sure they had everything they needed. Sometimes I spent $200 per month, sometimes $400, depending on whether they were hosting parties or had special requests. I averaged it out to $300 per month. That was $14,400. Then there was the car situation. Daniel's 2015 Honda had needed major repairs 18 months ago. The transmission had died, and they needed $3,800 to fix it. Of course, they couldn't afford it. Of course, I paid. Then there was the insurance. After Daniel's accident, his rates had gone up to $400 per month. I had been paying that for 2 years. That was $9,600. Medical expenses were next. Sarah's wisdom tooth surgery. Daniel's emergency room visit when he had food poisoning. Sarah's prescription glasses were when she lost her job and couldn't afford insurance. Various doctor visits and medications over the years. I calculated at least $6,200. Gifts were harder to calculate because I had never kept track. But there were birthdays, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter, their anniversary, and just random thinking of you gifts. I estimated $150 per month on average. That was $7,200. Then came the special requests, the vacation fund I had contributed to when they went to Mexico last year. $1,500. The laptop I bought Daniel when he started his new job. $800. The furniture I had purchased for their apartment over the years, at least $2,500. The wedding dress fund that had apparently paid for Sarah's secret wedding dress, $800. The engagement party I had hosted and paid for completely, $1,200. The numbers were staggering. I added them up 3 times to make sure I wasn't making a mistake. $79,200. $79,200. That's how much I had spent on Daniel and Sarah over 4 years. That was more than my annual income. That was more than my car was worth. That was money I could have used to travel, to fix up my house, to secure my own future. And what had I gotten in return? A secret wedding that I wasn't invited to. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through our text message history. I wanted to see the pattern that I had been blind to for so long. What I found made my stomach turn. In the past year alone, Daniel had texted me 847 times. I had saved all our conversations because I liked being able to look back at our family memories. But as I scrolled through them now, I realized that 743 of those 847 texts were requests for money or complaints about their financial situation. Mom, the electric bill is higher than expected this month. Could you help us out? Linda, Sarah's car needs new tires. We're really struggling right now. Hey, Mom, could you pick up some groceries for us this week? Money is tight until Daniel gets paid. Linda, we hate to ask, but could you cover rent this month? Daniel's hours got cut at work. On and on it went. Month after month of requests, demands, and financial emergencies that somehow always required my immediate help. And like a fool, I had responded to every single one with offers to help, questions about how much they needed, promises that everything would be okay. But scattered between all those financial requests were only 104 texts that weren't about money. And most of those were responses to something I had initiated, birthday wishes I had sent first, holiday greetings I had started, questions about their lives that I had asked. The ratio was devastating. Almost 90% of our communication was about money. Less than 10% was about anything else. I scrolled back further and found even more disturbing patterns. Every time I had tried to make plans to spend time together, they had excuses. But every time they needed money, they were available immediately. When I had suggested we all go to dinner for my birthday last year, Sarah had said they were too tired from work. But when their rent was due 3 days later, they had showed up at my door within an hour of texting me. Then I looked at the timing of their communication. I started to notice that their emergencies always seemed to happen right before my Social Security check arrived each month. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. My phone rang, interrupting my investigation. It was Daniel. "Hi, Mom," he said, and his voice had that careful tone he used when he wanted something. "Sarah told me you seemed upset yesterday about the wedding news. We thought maybe you misunderstood something." "Misunderstood what exactly?" I asked. "Well, it wasn't really a wedding. It was more like a legal ceremony. Just paperwork, really. We're still planning the big celebration, and of course you'll be part of that." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost believed him for a second. Almost. "Daniel, I saw the photos on Facebook. The flowers, the cake, the photographer, the 43 guests. That wasn't just paperwork." Silence. "We can explain that," he said finally. "It's complicated. But the important thing is that we love you and we want you to be part of our lives." "Then why wasn't I part of yesterday?" Another silence. "Look, Mom, Sarah's parents were really pushing for a small ceremony, and we didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings by having some family there and not others. So you decided to hurt my feelings instead?" "It wasn't like that. We thought. We thought you would understand. You're always so supportive of whatever makes us happy." There it was. The assumption that had defined our relationship for 4 years. The assumption that I would always understand, always support, always pay for whatever they wanted, and never ask for anything in return. "Daniel," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. In the past year, how many times have you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not to invite me to do something that costs money, and not to solve a problem. Just to talk to your mother." Another long silence. "I don't know, Mom. I don't keep track of that stuff." "I do. The answer is 0. In the past year, you have never once called me just to see how I'm doing. That's not fair. We've been really busy with work and—" "Daniel, stop. Just stop lying to me. I've been looking at our text messages. Do you know that 90% of our communication in the past year has been about money?" "Mom, I think you're being overly dramatic about this." "Am I? Let me ask you something else. When was the last time you invited me to do something that didn't require me to pay for it? We invite you to things all the time. Name one." Silence. "Daniel, I have spent $79,200 on you and Sarah over the past 4 years. Did you know that number?" "Mom, we never asked you to keep track of." $79,200, Daniel. That's more money than most people make in a year. And yesterday you got married without inviting me. It wasn't about you, Mom. It was about us wanting a simple ceremony. It was about you wanting my money, but not my presence. There's a difference." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear or sadness, but from anger. Pure, clean anger that felt better than the confusion and hurt I had been carrying. 20 minutes later, My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Linda, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Daniel and I would love to take you to lunch this week to talk about everything. Would Thursday work for you? I stared at that text for a long time. A year ago, even a week ago, I would have jumped at the chance to have lunch with them. I would have been grateful for the invitation and eager to clear up any misunderstanding. But now I could see it for what it was, another manipulation, another attempt to smooth things over so the money could keep flowing. I typed back, "Who's paying for this lunch?" She responded immediately, "We are, of course. We want to treat you." I almost laughed. They wanted to treat me to lunch with the money I had given them to pay their rent. "Sarah," I typed back, "you need to understand something. I know exactly how much money I've given you and Daniel over the past 4 years, $79,200. I have receipts, bank statements, and records of every single payment. You don't have the money to treat me to lunch. You have my money. There's a difference." She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, the tone had completely changed. "Linda, we've always been grateful for your help, but that help was given freely. We never forced you to do anything." "You're right. You never forced me. You manipulated me. You made me believe I was part of your family while you were planning to exclude me from the most important day of your lives. We love you like family. Yesterday doesn't change that. If I'm family, why wasn't I at your family wedding?" No response. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 4 years. I went for a walk around my neighborhood without my phone. I needed to think without the constant possibility of Daniel or Sarah calling with another emergency, another request, another manipulation disguised as a family conversation. As I walked past the houses in my quiet subdivision, I thought about all the things I could have done with $79,200. I could have traveled to Europe, something I had always dreamed of doing. I could have renovated my kitchen, which hadn't been updated since 1987. I could have put that money in a retirement account and let it grow for my future security. Instead, I had used it to subsidize the lives of 2 adults who saw me as nothing more than a convenient ATM. But as angry as I was, I also felt something unexpected: relief. For the first time in 4 years, I could see the situation clearly. I wasn't going crazy. I wasn't being unreasonable. I was being used, and now I finally had proof. When I got home, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to stop giving them money. Not gradually, not with explanations or negotiations, but immediately and completely. It was time to see if Daniel and Sarah loved me or if they just loved my bank account. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. For so long, my days had been structured around Daniel and Sarah's needs, checking my phone for their latest crisis, making sure I had enough money in my checking account to cover their emergencies, planning my schedule around their requests for help. Today, for the first time in 4 years, my day belonged entirely to me. My first stop was the bank. I had been going to First National for 15 years, and the staff knew me well. Too well, as it turned out. When I walked in, Mrs. Rodriguez at the customer service desk looked up with a knowing smile. "Good morning, Linda. Are you here to set up another transfer for Daniel and Sarah? I have their account information right here." The casual way she said it hit me like a slap. Even the bank staff recognized the pattern. They knew that Linda Peterson meant automatic payments to her son and daughter-in-law. "Actually, Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm here to cancel all automatic transfers to their account permanently." Her smile faded. "Oh, is there a problem with the system?" "The problem is that the system has been working too well. I need to speak with the manager about protecting my accounts." Mrs. Rodriguez led me to Mr. Harrison's office. He was a man in his 50s who had helped me set up my retirement accounts when my husband passed away 8 years ago. He remembered me as the widow who had been careful with money, who had asked smart questions about investment options, who had seemed determined to make her husband's life insurance policy last. "Linda," he said as I sat down, "Mrs. Rodriguez told me you want to make some changes to your accounts. What can I help you with?" I took a deep breath. "Mr. Harrison, I need to protect my money from my own family." He leaned forward, his expression growing serious. Are you being pressured to give money to someone? Not pressured exactly, but I've been supporting my son and his wife for 4 years, and I just realized they've been manipulating me. They got married 2 days ago and didn't invite me to the wedding, even though I've given them over $79,000 during our relationship. Mr. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. $79,000? Linda, that's a significant portion of your assets. Are you sure about that number? I pulled out the notebook where I had done my calculations. I'm sure. I have bank statements to prove it. He looked through my records with growing concern. Linda, according to your account history, you've transferred nearly 60% of your available savings to Daniel's account over the past 4 years. This level of financial support, it's not sustainable for someone in your situation. I know that now. What I need to know is how to protect what's left. Mr. Harrison spent the next hour walking me through my options. First, he canceled all automatic transfers to Daniel and Sarah's accounts. Then he set up new security protocols that would require my physical presence and 2 forms of ID for any transfer over $100. He also helped me open a new savings account at a different branch, one that Daniel and Sarah didn't know about. Linda, he said as we finished the paperwork, I have to ask, are you prepared for their reaction to this? In my experience, when families are cut off from financial support, they don't always respond well. I'm prepared, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. If they pressure you to reverse these changes, or if they threaten you in any way, you need to call me immediately. What you've described sounds like financial elder abuse, and there are laws to protect you. Financial elder abuse. The phrase hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had never thought of it that way, but that's exactly what it was. My own son had been financially abusing me for 4 years. From the bank, I went to see Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who lived next door. I had always admired her independence and strength, and I had heard through neighborhood gossip that she had dealt with similar family problems a few years ago. Mrs. Chen invited me in for tea and listened to my whole story without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded knowingly. Linda, I went through something very similar with my daughter and son-in-law. They lived off me for 6 years before I finally put a stop to it. What happened when you cut them off? At first, they were angry, very angry. They threatened to never let me see my grandchildren again. They told other family members that I was being cruel and unreasonable. They even tried to convince my doctor that I was having memory problems so they could get control of my finances. My blood ran cold. They tried to have you declared incompetent. They tried, but I was prepared. I had documentation of everything they had taken from me, and I had witnesses who could testify that I was perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Did it work? Mrs. Chen smiled sadly. Eventually, yes, but not right away. It took almost 2 years before my daughter realized that she needed to build a relationship with me based on love, not money. Now we're closer than we've ever been, but it was a very difficult process. Do you think Daniel and Sarah might come around eventually? I don't know, dear. Some people do, some people don't. But what I can tell you is that you'll never have a real relationship with them as long as you're supporting them financially. The money will always be the real relationship. That afternoon, I called my sister Margaret to update her on what I had learned and what I was planning to do. Linda, I'm proud of you for taking action, she said, but I'm also worried about you. Are you ready for how ugly this might get? What do you mean? Honey, you've just cut off their primary source of income. They're going to do whatever it takes to get that money flowing again. They might try to guilt you, manipulate you, or even threaten you. You need to be prepared for that. Margaret was right, and deep down, I knew it. But I also knew I couldn't continue living the way I had been. I was 68 years old, and I deserved better than being treated like a human ATM by my own son. That evening, I decided to do something I had never done before. I changed my locks. Daniel and Sarah had keys to my house, keys I had given them years ago in case of emergency. But after their surprise visit to announce their secret wedding, I realized that those keys were just another way for them to have access to me whenever they needed something. The locksmith, a young man named Kevin, was curious about why a single woman was changing all her locks. Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, are you having security concerns? I can install some additional safety features if you're worried about break-ins. It's not strangers I'm worried about, I said. It's family members who think they have unlimited access to my home and my money. Kevin nodded understandingly. I get a lot of calls like that, actually. More than you'd think. Family can be complicated. While Kevin worked on the locks, I called a security company and arranged to have cameras installed around my property. I had never felt the need for security cameras before, but Mrs. Chen's warning about her family's reaction had made me realize I needed to be prepared for anything. The system will alert you on your phone whenever someone comes to your door, the security representative explained. You'll be able to see who's there and decide whether you want to answer. You can also record conversations if you need to for legal purposes. Legal purposes. Another phrase I had never expected to associate with my relationship with Daniel. My phone had been buzzing with calls and texts from Daniel and Sarah all day, but I ignored them. I wasn't ready to talk to them yet, not until I had finished setting up my defenses. Every text message was a variation of the same theme. They were confused about why I was upset. They wanted to make things right. They loved me and missed me. But notably, none of the messages included an actual apology for excluding me from the wedding. None of them acknowledged that what they had done was hurtful. They were all focused on managing my reaction, not taking responsibility for their actions. That night, I made a list of all the ways Daniel and Sarah had access to my life. Keys to my house changed. My Netflix password would change tomorrow. My Amazon Prime account would remove them tomorrow. My Costco membership card would report as lost. Emergency contact at my doctor's office would update. Beneficiary on one of my life insurance policies would need to review. It was stunning how much access I had given them over the years. Little by little, I had made myself completely available to them while they had given me nothing in return. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Daniel and Sarah had apparently realized that their financial lifeline had been cut off, and they were panicking. The messages started concerned and loving. Mom, we're worried about you. Please call us back. Linda, we love you so much. Please don't shut us out. But as the night had progressed, the tone had shifted. Mom, we need to talk about this rent situation. Our payment was supposed to go through today. Linda, I don't know what's going on, but we have bills due. This isn't the time for games. And by morning, they had turned angry. Mom, you're being ridiculous. We're family. You can't just abandon us like this. Linda, you're acting like we've done something terrible when all we did was have a small wedding ceremony. Reading through all those messages, I could see the progression clearly. When the loving manipulation hadn't worked, they had moved on to financial pressure. And when that hadn't worked, they had turned to anger and blame. But there was something else I noticed. Not once in 43 text messages had either of them actually apologized for getting married without me. Not once had they acknowledged that their actions had been hurtful. The entire focus was on managing my reaction so they could get their money back. At 9 a.m., my doorbell rang. The new security camera showed Daniel and Sarah standing on my front porch. Daniel was holding an envelope, and Sarah had tears in her eyes. I didn't answer the door. They rang the bell again and again. Finally, Daniel called out, Mom, we know you're in there. We can see your car in the driveway. Please open the door. We need to talk. I picked up my phone and called them instead of opening the door. We're right outside, Daniel said when he answered. Why won't you let us in? Because I'm not ready to see you yet. If you want to talk, we can talk on the phone. Mom, this is crazy. We're your family. You can't keep us locked out of your house. You kept me locked out of your wedding. I think we're even. Sarah's voice came through the phone, high and desperate. Linda, please, we brought you something. We wanted to show you the wedding photos and explain everything. I already saw the wedding photos on Facebook, all 47 of them, but you don't understand the whole situation. Sarah's parents insisted on. Daniel, stop. Just stop lying to me. I'm tired of being lied to. They stayed on my porch for another 10 minutes, alternating between pleading and demanding that I let them in. Finally, they left the envelope by my door and drove away. Inside the envelope was a wedding photo of Daniel and Sarah, signed with love to the best mother and mother-in-law in the world. There was also a card that said they were sorry I had misunderstood their intentions and that they hoped we could put this behind us and move forward as a family. Still no real apology, still no acknowledgement of what they had actually done wrong. But there was also something else in the envelope, a bill. Their rent notice showed that payment was overdue and that they had 10 days to pay or face eviction. They hadn't just come to apologize, they had come to collect their monthly payment. For the first time in 4 years, I threw away something Daniel and Sarah had given me. The photo, the card, and the rent bill all went straight into the trash. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back porch, enjoying the quiet of an afternoon that belonged entirely to me. The first week after I cut off the money was relatively quiet. Daniel and Sarah called every day, sometimes multiple times, but when I didn't answer, they eventually stopped leaving voicemails. I thought maybe they were finally getting the message that our relationship needed to change. I was wrong. On Thursday morning, I woke up to pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. The security camera showed me a man I didn't recognize, older, wearing an expensive-looking suit and carrying a briefcase. "Mrs. Peterson," he called out in a loud, authoritative voice. "I'm attorney Robert Mitchell. I represent Daniel Peterson and Sarah Peterson. We need to speak with you about a family matter." My blood turned to ice. They had hired a lawyer. I called out through the door, "I don't want to speak with you. Please leave my property." "Mrs. Peterson, this concerns your mental competency and your family's concern for your welfare. It would be in your best interest to cooperate with this inquiry." Mental competency. The same weapon Mrs. Chen had warned me about. They were trying to have me declared incompetent so they could take control of my finances. I didn't open the door, but I did call my own lawyer. I had gotten the name of an elder law attorney from Mrs. Chen the week before, just in case. Her name was Patricia Williams, and she specialized in protecting seniors from financial abuse. "Miss Williams," I said when her secretary put me through, "I think my son is trying to have me declared mentally incompetent so he can control my money. How quickly can you get to my office?" She asked. "I can be there in 30 minutes. Come now. And bring all your financial records from the past 4 years." Mrs. Williams was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened to my entire story without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "Linda," she said when I finished, "what you've described is textbook elder financial abuse. The fact that they've now hired an attorney to challenge your competency tells me they're desperate and willing to go to extreme lengths to regain access to your money. Can they actually have me declared incompetent?" "They can try, but it's not easy. They would need to prove to a judge that you're unable to manage your own affairs. Based on our conversation today, and the fact that you've been managing your finances independently your entire adult life, that's going to be very difficult for them to do." Miss Williams explained that we needed to be proactive. She helped me gather all the documentation that would prove my mental competency: bank statements showing responsible financial management, medical records showing good health, and testimonials from neighbors and friends about my cognitive abilities. "We're also going to get you evaluated by a geriatric psychiatrist," she said. "I know that sounds scary, but we want professional documentation that you're mentally sound. That way, if they try to challenge you in court, we'll have expert testimony on our side." When I got home that afternoon, Attorney Mitchell was gone, but there was a legal document taped to my door. It was a notice that Daniel and Sarah were petitioning the court to have me evaluated for mental incompetency and to have Daniel appointed as my financial guardian. The language was cold and clinical. Petitioners allege that Linda Peterson, age 68, has shown signs of cognitive decline, including irrational financial decisions, social isolation, paranoid behavior, and refusal to accept help from concerned family members. Every phrase had been carefully chosen to make my reasonable actions sound like symptoms of dementia. My decision to stop giving them money was irrational financial behavior, My new friendships with Mrs. Chen and the other neighbors were social isolation from my real family. My security cameras and door locks were paranoid behavior. My refusal to let them manipulate me was refusal to accept help. It was diabolical in its cleverness. That evening, Daniel called me directly. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded different, harder. "We got your little message from the lawyer. We know you hired someone to try to keep us away from you. I hired someone to protect myself from what you're trying to do to me. What we're trying to do is help you. Can't you see that you're not thinking clearly? You've completely changed in the past 2 weeks. You won't see us. You won't take our calls. You've cut off our financial support for no reason. The reason is that you got married without me. Mom, that was just one day. One day, and you're willing to destroy our entire relationship over it? Daniel, our entire relationship was built on me giving you money. When I stopped giving you money, there was no relationship left. That should tell you something. That's not true. We love you. When was the last time you told me you love me before I stopped giving you money?" Silence. "When was the last time you asked how I was feeling, or if I needed anything, or if I was lonely?" More silence. "When was the last time you invited me to spend time with you that didn't cost me money?" Mom, this conversation isn't productive. The point is, Sarah and I are worried about you. We think you need help. The only help I need is protection from the two of you. Mom, listen to me carefully. If you don't start acting reasonably, we're going to have to take legal action to protect you from yourself. We don't want to do that, but you're forcing our hand. You already took legal action. You hired a lawyer to have me declared incompetent, only because you won't listen to reason. Mom, we're offering you one last chance to work this out as a family. Drop the lawyer, start supporting us again, and we can pretend this whole thing never happened. And if I don't, then we'll see you in court." He hung up. 20 minutes later, Sarah called. "Linda," she said, and she was crying. "I can't believe it's come to this. I love you so much. You've been like a real mother to me for 4 years. Sarah, if I were like a real mother to you, why wasn't I at your wedding? That was a mistake. I know that now. We should have included you. But that doesn't mean you should punish us for the rest of our lives. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself." "From what?" "We would never hurt you. You have already hurt me, repeatedly, for 4 years. Linda, please, we're going to lose our apartment. We have nowhere else to go. My parents can't help us, and Daniel's father won't return our calls. You're our only family. I was your only family 2 weeks ago, too. That didn't stop you from excluding me from your wedding. I know we made a mistake, but Sarah, let me ask you something. If I didn't have any money, would you still want a relationship with me?" "Of course I would. That's a terrible thing to ask." "Then prove it. Build a relationship with me that has nothing to do with money. Stop asking me to pay for things. Stop expecting me to solve your financial problems. Just be my daughter-in-law without the financial component. We can do that. But right now we need help with the rent. After that, we can work on changing things." And there it was. Even in the middle of promising to change, she couldn't help but ask for money. "Sarah, the fact that you just asked me for rent money while promising not to ask me for money tells me everything I need to know about how serious you are about changing." I hung up. The next few days brought an escalating series of attempts to pressure me into submission. They tried guilt. "We're going to be homeless because of you." They tried fear. "What if you have a medical emergency and there's no one to help you?" They tried manipulation. "Everyone in the family thinks you're being cruel." But the attempt that disturbed me the most came on Saturday morning. I was in my garden, planting new flowers that I had bought for myself, when Sarah showed up with a woman I didn't recognize. "Linda," Sarah called out, "I brought someone to meet you. This is Dr. Rebecca Foster. She's a geriatric specialist, and she just wants to ask you a few questions." Dr. Foster was a middle-aged woman with a kind smile and a clipboard. She approached me with the confident manner of someone used to dealing with elderly patients. "Mrs. Peterson," she said, "your family is concerned about some changes in your behavior. I understand you've been making some unusual financial decisions lately?" My financial decisions are none of your business, I said. Mrs. Peterson, I'm just here to help. Your son and daughter-in-law love you very much, and they're worried that you might not be thinking as clearly as usual. Did they pay you to come here? Dr. Foster looked uncomfortable. Well, yes, they've retained my services to do an assessment, but then you're not here to help me. You're here to help them. Please leave my property. Mrs. Peterson, if you're refusing medical evaluation, that could be seen as a sign of cognitive impairment, or it could be seen as a sign that I'm smart enough not to trust a doctor who's being paid by people who want to control my money. After they left, I called Miss Williams immediately. They brought a doctor to your house? She asked. Without your consent? Yes. And when I refused to talk to her, she said that refusal could be seen as a sign of cognitive impairment. Linda, that's completely unethical. A legitimate doctor would never ambush a patient like that. This sounds like they found someone willing to create documentation that you're incompetent, regardless of the facts. What do? We fight fire with fire. I'm scheduling you for a comprehensive evaluation with Dr. James Morrison next week. He's one of the most respected geriatric psychiatrists in the state. His evaluation will carry much more weight with a judge than anything they can produce. That night, I barely slept. The stress of the situation was taking its toll on me, and I wondered if maybe I really was losing my mind. Was I being unreasonable? Was I punishing Daniel and Sarah too harshly for one mistake? But then I remembered the wedding photos, the joy on their faces as they celebrated without me. The 43 guests had been invited while I was excluded, the expensive reception that had been paid for with money I had given them. This wasn't about one mistake. This was about 4 years of being used and manipulated by people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. On Monday morning, Miss Williams called with disturbing news. Linda, I've received a formal petition from their attorney. They're requesting an emergency guardianship hearing, claiming that you're in immediate danger of financial exploitation by your new legal counsel. They're claiming that you're exploiting me? Yes, miss. It's a common tactic. They're arguing that evil lawyers have convinced you to cut off support to your loving family so that we can steal your money instead. That's insane. It's also smart, unfortunately. If they can convince a judge that you're being manipulated by outside parties, it makes their case for guardianship much stronger. The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. I had 6 days to prepare for a legal battle that would determine whether I maintained control over my own life and money, or whether my son would become my legal guardian with complete access to my finances. Linda, Mrs. Williams said, I need you to understand how serious this is. If they win, Daniel will have complete control over your bank accounts, your investments, your house, everything. He'll be able to decide where you live, what medical care you receive, even who you're allowed to see. Can they really do that? If a judge believes you're incompetent, yes. They can essentially treat you like a child who can't make decisions for herself. That night, I called Mrs. Chen and told her what was happening. Linda, she said, I want you to know that what you're going through is not unusual. There are thousands of families like yours where adult children try to take control of their parents' finances. The fact that they're willing to go this far tells you everything you need to know about their motivation. I'm scared, I admitted. What if the judge believes them? Then you'll appeal and you'll keep fighting. But Linda, you have something that many people in your situation don't have. You have documentation, you have witnesses, and you have a good lawyer. Most importantly, you have the truth on your side. What if I lose everything? Honey, you already lost everything that mattered 4 years ago. You lost your self-respect, your independence, and your son's genuine love. The only thing you're fighting for now is the right to live your own life. She was right. The money wasn't really what this was about. This was about whether I would be allowed to exist as an independent person, or whether I would be reduced to nothing more than a financial resource controlled by my own child. As I prepared for the fight of my life, I realized that win or lose, I had already accomplished something important. I had stopped being a victim. I had found my voice, my strength, and my self-worth. Now I just had to convince a judge that a 68-year-old woman who refused to be financially abused by her family was sane, not crazy. The week leading up to the guardianship hearing was the most psychologically brutal period of my entire life. Daniel and Sarah had apparently decided that if legal pressure wasn't working fast enough, they would try to break me down emotionally before we ever got to court. It started with the phone calls, not just from them, but from people I hadn't heard from in years. Daniel's father, my ex-husband, called me for the first time in 8 years. "Linda," he said in that condescending tone I remembered so well, "Daniel called me about your situation. I think you should know that everyone in the family is very concerned about you." "What family?" I asked. "You haven't spoken to me in 8 years. That doesn't mean I don't care about your well-being." "Daniel says you've been acting erratically, cutting off support for no reason, refusing to see them." That doesn't sound like the Linda I knew. The Linda you knew was being financially abused by your son, and she was too stupid to realize it. "Linda, that's harsh. Daniel is a good boy. He would never take advantage of you. He's taken $79,000 from me over 4 years and then got married without inviting me. How is that not taking advantage? Families help each other. That's what family does. When was the last time you helped me with anything?" Silence. When was the last time Daniel helped me with anything that didn't involve him getting money? More silence. That's what I thought. "You can tell Daniel that his concerned father act doesn't work when you've been absent from our lives for 8 years. I hung up, but the calls kept coming. Daniel's Aunt Carol, who lived in Florida and whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to tell me she was worried about my mental state. Sarah's mother called to say she was praying for my recovery from this difficult time. Even my own cousin Janet, whom I hadn't spoken to since my husband's funeral, called to say she hoped I would reconsider my harsh stance towards such a loving young couple. The message was always the same. Linda is mentally unwell. Daniel and Sarah are innocent victims, and any reasonable person would see that they deserve my financial support. But the calls were just the beginning. On Tuesday, I found a letter in my mailbox from the pastor of the church I had attended years ago, before I stopped going because Daniel and Sarah always seemed to need help with something on Sunday mornings. "Dear Linda," the letter read, "I have been contacted by members of your family who are concerned about your spiritual and mental well-being. They have shared with me that you have withdrawn from family relationships and are refusing to help your son during a time of financial difficulty. I remember you as a generous and loving woman, and I pray that you will find your way back to the spirit of Christian charity that once defined you." Christian charity. As if being financially abused was a religious virtue. I called the church office immediately. "Pastor Williams," I said when they put me through, "I received your letter and I need to ask you something. When you wrote that letter, did you know that Daniel and Sarah got married without inviting me to the wedding?" "Well, no, they didn't mention that specifically, but did you know that I've given them $79,000 over 4 years and that they used my money to pay for a wedding they didn't invite me to?" "Linda, I don't think the specific details matter as much as the spirit of forgiveness and, Pastor, would you give $79,000 to someone who excluded you from their wedding?" A long pause. "Perhaps I don't have all the information I need to comment on this situation," he admitted. "No, you don't. And maybe next time someone asks you to help pressure an elderly woman into giving money to people who treat her badly, you should get the whole story first." I hung up and added Pastor Williams to my growing list of people who had been willing to judge me without knowing the facts. But the psychological pressure campaign was just getting started. On Wednesday, I discovered that Daniel and Sarah had been posting about our situation on social media. Not directly mentioning my name, but making it clear who they were talking about. Daniel's post read, "It's heartbreaking when someone you love starts to change as they get older. Mental decline can make people suspicious and cruel, even toward family members who have only shown them love and support. Sarah and I are going through a really difficult time right now, and we could use all the prayers and positive thoughts you can send our way." The comments were predictably supportive. "So sorry you're going through this. Aging can be so hard on family. You're such good kids for trying to help her." Sarah's post was even more manipulative. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. I've spent 4 years thinking of someone as my second mother, only to have her turn her back on us when we needed her most. I'm trying to remember that this isn't really who she is. It's the illness talking. But it's so hard to watch someone you care about become someone you don't recognize. Dozens of people had commented with sympathy and support for Sarah, painting her as the victim of a cruel, mentally ill mother-in-law. I screenshotted both posts and sent them to Ms. Williams. "This is actually helpful," she said when she called me back. "It shows premeditation. They're not just claiming you're mentally ill in legal documents. They're spreading that narrative publicly to build support for their case. It demonstrates that this is a calculated campaign, not a genuine concern." On Thursday, the day before the hearing, Sarah showed up at my house with her mother and her sister. I watched them through the security camera as they approached my door, carrying flowers and a small gift bag. I didn't answer the door, but I did record their conversation through the intercom system. "Linda," Sarah's mother called out, "this is Margaret Foster, Sarah's mom. We met a few years ago at Daniel's birthday party. I wanted to come talk to you because I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We brought you some flowers," Sarah's sister added, "just to show you that we care about you and want to work things out." Sarah herself was crying openly. "Linda, please. I know you're in there. I just want to talk to you. I miss you so much. You've been more of a mother to me than my own mother in some ways, and I can't stand this distance between us." Her mother picked up the manipulation. "Linda, Sarah has been crying every day since this started. She loves you so much, and she can't understand why you've suddenly turned against her. We're all very worried about you." "Maybe she's having a medical episode," Sarah's sister suggested loudly enough for me to hear. "I read that sudden personality changes can be a sign of a stroke or dementia." They stayed on my porch for 20 minutes, alternating between expressions of love and concern, and subtle implications that I was mentally unwell. The performance was Oscar-worthy, but I could see it for what it was, a last-ditch attempt to manipulate me into backing down before the hearing. When they finally left, I found myself shaking with anger. These people were willing to destroy my reputation, question my sanity, and turn my own neighbors against me, all to regain access to my bank account. That evening, I received a call from Mrs. Rodriguez at the bank. "Linda," she said, "I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you should know that Daniel came in today, asking about your accounts." "What did he want to know?" "He claimed he was concerned about your mental state and wanted to know if we had noticed any unusual activity in your accounts. He also asked about the process for having someone declared a financial guardian." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that your accounts were private and that all your financial activity had been completely normal and responsible." "But Linda," he seemed very determined. He made some comments about how elderly people can become confused and make poor financial decisions. "Did he ask for any specific information about my accounts?" "He tried, but I told him we couldn't discuss your private financial information with anyone, even family members, without your written consent." After I hung up with Mrs. Rodriguez, I realized the full scope of what Daniel and Sarah were doing. This wasn't just about the guardianship hearing. They were conducting a comprehensive campaign to gather evidence and build support for their claim that I was mentally incompetent. They had contacted family members to create a narrative of concern. They had involved religious leaders to add moral authority to their position. They had made social media posts to build public sympathy. They had brought witnesses to my house to document my refusal to cooperate. They had even tried to get information from my bank to support their claims. It was sophisticated, calculated, and absolutely ruthless, but it was also desperate. And desperation, I was learning, could make people reveal their true character in ways they never intended. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about everything that had brought me to this point. 4 years ago, I had been a widow trying to be a good mother, eager to help my son build a successful life with the woman he loved. I had given freely, gladly, believing that my generosity was creating stronger family bonds. Now I was preparing to argue in court that I was mentally competent enough to control my own money, while my son tried to convince a judge that I was too crazy to make my own financial decisions. How had it come to this? But as I thought about it more, I realized that this moment had been inevitable from the beginning. As long as I was willing to be used, Daniel and Sarah would continue to use me. As long as I was willing to be financially abused, they would continue to abuse me. As long as I allowed them to treat me as a resource instead of a person, they would never see me as anything else. The court case wasn't really about my mental competence. It was about whether I had the right to exist as an independent human being, or whether my value was entirely tied to my ability to provide money to ungrateful family members. Tomorrow, I would find out whether the legal system would protect my right to protect myself, or whether being a generous mother had somehow stripped me of my right to say no. As dawn broke on the day of the hearing, I got dressed in my best suit, gathered all my documentation, and prepared to fight for my freedom. I had never been more terrified, and I had never been more certain that I was doing the right thing. The courthouse was intimidating in the way that all government buildings seem designed to make ordinary people feel small. As Mrs. Williams and I walked through the metal detectors and up the marble stairs to the family court division, I could feel my hands shaking despite my determination to stay strong. "Remember," Ms. Williams said as we found seats outside the courtroom, "you don't have to prove that you're perfect. You just have to prove that you're competent to make your own financial decisions. The burden of proof is on them to show that you're not." Daniel and Sarah were already there, sitting with their attorney, Robert Mitchell, a man whose expensive suit and confident demeanor made it clear that this wasn't his first attempt to have someone's parent declared incompetent. They looked like a perfect young couple, Daniel in a navy blue suit that I had probably helped pay for, Sarah in a conservative black dress with her hair pulled back into a neat bun. They looked responsible, concerned, loving. They looked like everything I had believed them to be for 4 years. When our case was called, we all filed into Judge Harrison's courtroom. Judge Harrison was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind but shrewd eyes. She had been presiding over family court for 15 years, according to Ms. Williams, and she had seen every variation of family financial abuse that existed. Attorney Mitchell presented their case first. He painted a picture of a lonely, aging widow who had become increasingly paranoid and irrational, cutting off support to her loving family without cause, isolating herself from people who cared about her, and making bizarre financial decisions under the influence of manipulative neighbors and greedy lawyers. "Your Honor," he said, "Mrs. Peterson has displayed all the classic signs of age-related cognitive decline. She has become suspicious of her own family members. She has made irrational financial decisions based on imagined slights, and she has refused medical evaluation that could help determine the extent of her mental impairment." He called Daniel to testify first. "Your Honor," Daniel said, "my mother has always been generous with me and my wife, but recently she's changed completely. She won't answer our calls. She won't let us visit her, and she's cut off all financial support for no reason at all." "What do you mean by no reason?" Judge Harrison asked. "Well, she claims she was upset that she wasn't invited to our wedding, but that's not true. We had a very small ceremony, and we planned to have a larger celebration later that would include everyone." The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that for a moment I wondered if I had imagined the Facebook photos, the 43 guests, the elaborate reception. "How much financial support was your mother providing?" the judge asked. Daniel looked uncomfortable. "She helped us with rent sometimes and other expenses when we needed them." "How much specifically?" "I don't know the exact amount." "Approximately? Maybe a few $100s a month?" I could feel Ms. Williams tense beside me. Daniel was lying under oath, dramatically minimizing the amount of money I had given them. Sarah testified next, and her performance was even more convincing. She cried as she described how much she loved me, how worried she was about my mental state, how difficult it was to watch someone she cared about become paranoid and hostile. "Your Honor," she said through tears, "Linda has been like a mother to me for 4 years. She's always been so kind and generous, but lately, she's become someone I don't recognize. She's installed security cameras as if we're dangerous criminals. She's changed her locks to keep us out. She won't speak to us or see us. It's like she's become afraid of her own family. Then Attorney Mitchell called Dr. Rebecca Foster, the geriatric specialist who had ambushed me at my house. Dr. Foster, he said, based on your attempted evaluation of Mrs. Peterson, what is your professional opinion of her mental state? While Mrs. Peterson refused to cooperate with a full evaluation, her behavior during our brief encounter was consistent with paranoid ideation and possible cognitive impairment. Her refusal to undergo medical evaluation is itself a concerning symptom. In your professional opinion, is Mrs. Peterson capable of managing her own financial affairs? Based on the information I've been given about her recent erratic behavior, I would have serious concerns about her decision-making capacity. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed it myself. Then it was our turn. Miss Williams called me to testify first. I had been dreading this moment, but as I sat in the witness chair and looked at Judge Harrison, I felt a calm clarity settle over me. Mrs. Peterson, Miss Williams said, can you tell the court about your financial support of Daniel and Sarah over the past 4 years? I gave them $79,200 over 4 years, I said clearly. I have bank records documenting every transfer, every payment, every gift. Judge Harrison looked surprised. Did you say $79,200? Yes, Your Honor. $37,200 in rent payments, $14,400 in grocery and household expenses, $9,600 in car insurance and repairs, $6,200 in medical expenses, $7,200 in gifts, and approximately $4,600 in various other expenses. And Daniel testified that you gave them only a few $100s per month? Daniel lied under oath, Your Honor. The average monthly support was $1,650. Judge Harrison made a note on her papers. Mrs. Peterson, can you tell me about Daniel and Sarah's wedding? I took a deep breath and told the truth. The phone call where Sarah told me they had gotten married the day before. The Facebook photos show 43 guests. The elaborate reception had cost thousands of dollars. The professional photographer and the formal wedding attire. Your Honor, I said, they didn't just exclude me from a small ceremony. They planned and executed a full wedding celebration with dozens of guests using money I had given them and deliberately chose not to invite me. And how did that make you feel? It made me realize that for 4 years, I hadn't been a mother or a mother-in-law. I had been an ATM. Miss Williams then called our witnesses. Mrs. Chen testified about my mental clarity and emotional stability. Mrs. Rodriguez from the bank testified about my responsible financial management and the fact that all my banking decisions had been completely rational. Dr. Morrison, the geriatric psychiatrist, testified that his comprehensive evaluation had found me to be in excellent mental health with no signs of cognitive impairment. Your Honor, Dr. Morrison said, Mrs. Peterson's cognitive function tested well above average for her age group. She demonstrated excellent memory, clear reasoning ability, and sound judgment. There is absolutely no medical evidence to support a claim of mental incompetency. Then Mrs. Williams presented the evidence we had gathered, bank statements showing the exact amounts I had transferred to Daniel and Sarah, screenshots of their social media posts about our situation, records of their attempts to pressure and manipulate me, documentation of their campaign to convince family members, religious leaders, and medical professionals that I was mentally ill. Your Honor, Miss Williams said, this is not a case of a confused elderly woman making irrational decisions. This is a case of a strong, intelligent woman finally recognizing that she was being financially abused and taking steps to protect herself. In his closing argument, Attorney Mitchell tried to portray me as a bitter, vindictive woman who was punishing her loving family over a minor slight. But the evidence was overwhelming, and Judge Harrison had clearly seen through their manipulation. Your Honor, Miss Williams said in her closing, The petitioners want this court to believe that a woman who managed her finances responsibly for 40 years suddenly became incompetent the moment she decided to stop giving money to people who were using her. They want you to believe that a woman who raised a son alone, worked full-time, and managed her household independently for decades suddenly can't make rational decisions. They want you to believe that protecting yourself from financial abuse is a sign of mental illness. Judge Harrison retired to her chambers for 30 minutes. When she returned, her expression was stern. "I have reviewed all the evidence presented in this case," she began, "and I find that the petitioners have failed to meet their burden of proof. The evidence shows that Mrs. Peterson is in full possession of her mental faculties and is completely capable of managing her own financial affairs." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but Judge Harrison wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, "I am deeply troubled by the evidence of financial exploitation presented in this case. Mrs. Peterson has provided substantial financial support to the petitioners over a period of 4 years, totaling nearly $80,000, and was then excluded from their wedding celebration. The petitioners' response to Mrs. Peterson's reasonable decision to discontinue this support was to question her mental competency and attempt to gain legal control over her finances." She looked directly at Daniel and Sarah. "The court finds that this petition was filed not out of genuine concern for Mrs. Peterson's welfare, but in an attempt to regain access to her financial resources. The court denies the petition for guardianship in its entirety. We had one, not just the case, but something much more important. A judge had officially confirmed that I was sane, rational, and capable of making my own decisions." As we left the courthouse, Daniel and Sarah approached us in the hallway. Sarah was crying again, but this time the tears looked genuine. "Mom," Daniel said, "I'm sorry it came to this. I never wanted to take you to court." "But you did take me to court," I replied. "You tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could control my money." "We were scared," Sarah said. "We didn't know how we were going to survive without your help." "Sarah, you're both capable adults. You can get jobs, you can work more hours, you can live within your means like millions of other people do." "It won't be easy," Daniel admitted. "No, it won't, but it will be honest." That was the last conversation I had with Daniel and Sarah for 8 months. The months that followed were the most peaceful and fulfilling of my adult life. Without the constant drain of supporting Daniel and Sarah, I had money available for things I had forgotten I wanted. I traveled to Ireland, something I had dreamed about since I was a young woman. I renovated my kitchen with beautiful granite countertops and modern appliances. I joined a book club and a gardening club, and made new friends who valued my company, not my bank account. Most importantly, I learned to value myself. I got a part-time job at the local library, not because I needed the money, but because I wanted the social interaction and the sense of purpose. I started volunteering at a literacy center, teaching adults how to read. I began dating again, something I hadn't done since my husband passed away. For the first time in years, my life belonged to me. 8 months after the court hearing, Daniel called me. "Mom," he said, "I want to apologize. Really apologize, not just the fake apologies I gave you before." "I'm listening." "Sarah left me 3 months ago. She found someone else, someone with more money. After she left, I started thinking about everything that had happened, and I realized what we had done to you." "What had you done to me?" "We used you. We treated you like a bank account instead of a person. We took your love and your generosity, and we threw it away for money." "Yes, you did. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what we took from you, and I understand why you had to protect yourself from us. Daniel, I never stopped loving you, but I did have to stop enabling you." "I know. And Mom, I'm working 2 jobs now. I'm living in a small apartment that I pay for myself. I'm learning what it means to be independent. It's hard, but it's good. I feel like I'm finally growing up. I'm proud of you for that."